Hey folks, totally not named Dan here, though you can call me that if you want. And I don't know when this video is going out, but this particular segment is being recorded just before Christmas, so if you feel like getting me anything, please check my throne link down in the description below. I would really like some more of those Star Trek decks, or maybe a pre-order of the Critical Role card so I don't have to worry about finding the money when that comes out. But, you know, if you don't feel like getting me anything, don't worry. You don't have to. And frankly, I've already got the thing I wanted most, which I never thought I would. Because I've actually recently got a new locals for UniVersus. I'm playing the game in person again. And so today I get to bring you the first ever winning deck list from that locals. So unfortunately, I'm doing it on my own because the person who won with the deck list spent over a month telling me that we'd do the video together, and then when they finally arranged a date, just ghosted me on it. I still want to talk about this though because it's an important moment to me. It's a relevant character, and there's some interesting stuff to talk about here. The deck itself is very unrefined, probably not going to be the best for learning to play the character from, and I'm not sure it's worth learning to play the character at this point anyway, considering they were errata'd shortly after this. But I still think they're very interesting to look at. I still think there are a lot of cool cards in this deck, a lot of stuff worth talking about, and I got this really nice art from my buddy Archer Shark, who does this just borderline luminous lighting that I don't see anywhere else. I really like her work, and I didn't want to let it go to waste. Oh, that's the reasoning here, but now that you know who the character is, let's just hop on over to the deck list, look at it properly without any further delay, shall we? Yeah, as said, this deck may not do the best to teach you how to play the character. You will see there are a lot of 1-ofs and 2-ofs and a few 3-ofs too, and this looks very much like one of Joda's decks at a glance. At closer inspection though, you'll see that there are actually even more 1 and 2-ofs than he would normally put in a deck, and there are a few more attacks than there are foundations here. The reason for that is real simple. You weren't looking at the whole deck. The whole deck is more like this. It is a ridiculous mishmash of basically just what the player had available as far as I can tell, having picked up maybe a box of the set. So this is the first time one of my deck list images has actually gone off the playmat and I've had to recreate the table that was underneath it badly. So yeah, this one took a lot more work to put together the deck image for than most. Our character is the Smiling Titan, who canonically in Attack on Titan looks male, but I don't think she does at all, and she definitely isn't in the lore, so I'm going to be referring to her as a her throughout the rest of this video. So the Smiling Titan is a 6 hand size 31 health, which is already huge, but Attack on Titan and Godzilla have raised the numbers, so it's not actually as surprising as it could be. Her symbols are death and life. Doesn't have a third symbol because Attack on Titan's like that. And we have Titan keyword, obviously. Enhanced Tenacious, your attack gets plus X speed and plus X damage. X equals its printed difficulty -4. So on a 5 difficulty attack, it's only +1/+1, but that's already good. On some of the higher difficulties we have in here, like we've got some 7 difficulties, +3/+3 is a lot. Then there is here response once per turn. After an attack deals 6 or more damage, ready this character. So, you know, we can just commit this character to pass checks all the time, which really helps with the fact that we want to play high difficulty attacks, doesn't it? So speaking of which, our first is Smiling Titan Attacks, which was run very slightly after my local player played it by Andrew Porat in the NA Regionals earlier this year. I found it interesting that those were basically the 2 decks that ran as Smiling Titan Attacks, because while it's not a good card at a regular level of play, because yeah, okay, it's a 6/6 for 7, that's not amazing stats. Costs the rival a momentum, sure, getting rid of momentum's nice. Checks a 4, pretty good for an attack. Blocks 1 high, not bad. But I mean, that 7 difficulty is a lot, and it's not a massive payoff for it. The real payoff you get is that it turns into this, the unique Smiling Titan backup, which is form, commit, lose 1 stamina. Your rival's first attack next turn must be this backup if able. So the issue with that is that you can't use that ability the turn you use the attack, because it only builds end of turn. You can't use the form till the following turn, which means your opponent gets an entire turn to kill you before this can even do anything, and then it stops probably 1 attack. So this is great in Smiling Titan Dittos, where people are just throwing a couple of attacks, slugging it out against each other, and they have so many other means of defense that you can guarantee it'll go to turn 3 or later. But in a regular match, it's just a big numbers attack, because people die on turn 2, turn 3, especially when they only have 31 health. Then we do have 4 copies of this one. We have Deadly Fire. Deadly Fire blocks low and does it well, and it has response after you play this card. If a card has been played from anywhere other than the hand this turn, draw 1 card. You'll see what that's a response to in a little bit. And also, if it has 7 speed or more, your rival loses 3 health. Well, it gets +2 speed from character, because it's a 6 diff, so it only needs +1 more from elsewhere. And then because of the lose 3 health and the +2 damage, it's essentially a 7 speed for 12. But you know, that's pretty good, especially on only a 6 diff when our previous one was a 9/9 for 7. Then Hardened Blitz, can't leave your card pool due to rival effects. This is fantastic if your opponent has some ways of removing attacks. 4 high for 6. Enhanced, this attack gets +1 speed for every foundation destroyed this turn. Could be relevant. And Enhanced, destroy 1 foundation if you have 5 or more cards with Hardened or Red in their name in the discard pile. This attack gets +5 damage. So games probably aren't going to go long enough for that most of the time. But it's still +2/+2, so it's a 6/8 before we get any abilities other than the character. If we destroy for that effect, even though we're not necessarily going to get the +5 damage, we can still get the +1 speed from the other enhance, and that's assuming we haven't destroyed foundations in other ways. So again, not bad. But Hulking Grimace, which is also a 3 of, is far, far better, because this has a base 5/10, so it becomes a 7/12. Seals the block so they can't break you, and we don't get the draw off it, but I mean, it's a 7/12. That's a lot of damage. I love this card. Duplicate Deception Stab in case we needed a big throw. Also couples with Horse Toss. Does unflip momentum, but we never use that. However, it also messes with opponents' blocks with that first enhance. If it's your first attack this turn, remove a random card from your rival's hand. You get it back when this resolves. Horse Toss, though, is just stupid. 0 speed, so it's almost certainly getting blocked, so they're probably only taking half. But I mean, half of 11 is still 6 damage. That's still not an insubstantial amount of damage, and they have to block it to take away the other 5. Now we're getting to bottom of the barrel stuff. Red counter here. If this attack is not completely blocked, it doesn't clear from the card pool during the end phase. And then after your rival plays an attack, its damage cannot be modified. So this kind of messes with opponents in the mirror match. They can't give the plus damage, but they can still give the plus speed. And that's only if this isn't completely blocked, though it is coming in at a 6/6, so there's a little bit of difficulty there. It's an interesting piece, but I don't think it's especially great. Then GMA Takedown. After you block a weapon card, this gains Breaker 1, and your rival flips a momentum. Could be relevant, but mostly it's just a 2 high throw for 5. So you're guaranteeing 3 damage once you've given it the +1/+1, and if it's not blocked, you gain a momentum from your discard pile. Flamethrower, I love this card. Doesn't get enough damage here, it only goes up to 6, but it does get +X speed, where X equals the printed difficulty of top card of your deck when you mill it. And it does have powerful, so you can make it hugely damaging. And remember, we got some high difficulty stuff, so this could easily be a 10 speed, +1 from character makes it 11. So this gets real hard to block, and if it deals 5 or more damage, you destroy a foundation. So yeah, that's neat. Blue Flame Palm Strike. I mean, it's simple. It gives you a momentum at the top of your deck, and maybe fills your discard pile with a few more red or hardened cards, actually. But mostly it's a 5/6. It can use any of your extra momentum when it's powerful as well. And it gets +1/+1, so I guess it's base, it's a 6/7. Which, yeah, not bad. Not amazing, but definitely not terrible. Jaws of Life, you can sacrifice a foundation with difficulty 2 or greater to build the top 2 cards of your deck face down committed. So I guess just long term gives you more foundations, and short term gives you more to destroy. Sacrifice counts as destroy, so that buffs your Hardened Blitz again. And yeah, it's just a 5/6. Acceptable Losses is a mid-3 throw for 6 damage, but also you can actually make it 8 damage if you lose 2 health. And then we get to this one-of. This one-of is stupid. Because you have that little bit of self-mill, and because you check a decent amount, you will usually see this in the discard pile, even though it's only a one-of. And this has form discard pile, sacrifice 3 foundations. Oh look, we've just got rid of more foundations, so that's more buffs, a Hardened Blitz. And this is a card we're playing from the discard pile when we do that, so Deadly Fire gets a buff as well. But on top of the actual buffs, it gives itself -2 difficulty. So this is a 3 diff from your discard pile. It has stun 1, And if your rival has more foundations than you after you've done this, you get plus damage equal to the difference, in addition to the +1/+1 from character, because, yeah, okay, it's only a 3 difficulty attack, but it's still a printed 5. Then moving on, we got Hardened Fist. Hardened Fist is combos on a Fury. It is only a 4 diff, so it doesn't get any buffs from character, but it says your rival destroys a face-up foundation and may build the top card of their deck committed. They get a face down with no abilities. And then the next time you destroy a foundation during this attack, you can build the top card of your deck. I don't think Hardened Fist is a great inclusion in this character, but I suspect my opponent who played this was just bulking out the list at this point. Likewise with Full Cowling Impact, rival sacrifices a foundation after it's blocked. That's the big thing here. But also +1 damage for each card in your rival's hand is not bad if you know they can't block a low. I can absolutely see why this is only a one-of, even though it was a widely available promo that I actually own at least 6 copies of myself. But to destroy a foundation's not bad. It does make them want to not block it, though you can't put massive damage on it. And yeah, that's our attack lineup. Smiling Titan attacks and Deadly Fire are definitely the most threatening of the bunch, but Hardened Blitz and Hulking Grimace are well up there as well. And yeah, with committing character for stuff and then getting ready again, we can do a lot with these. And it just consistently kills in just a few attacks, so turn 2, turn 3. It is a very surprisingly reliable, given just how many one-offs and stuff it has, aggro deck. And moving on to the foundations, we have Desperate Struggle here. Flip, after your rival's attack gets a damage bonus, return it to its printed damage, or after it gets a speed bonus, return it to its printed speed. Just to guarantee that you can stop as much as possible of your opponent's stuff, so that while you can kill in 3 attacks, hopefully they can't. Same old field rations. Once per turn Tenacious, after you gain health, ready this foundation. If your rival has 10 or more foundations, ready another foundation. I mean, it's nothing major, but if we have ways to gain health, it readies itself still. Bench Press. If you've lost health this turn, your attack gets +1 damage. So we got that one attack that loses health, but we may have other ways to do so, we'll see. And then Enhanced Flip, if this attack deals damage, gain 2 health. That just, again, helps keep us alive during opponent's attacks. It's a solid card. I mean, if you've lost health this turn, +1 on every attack this turn is pretty good. It's not as good in Smiling Titan, who only wants to play 3 or 4 attacks ever, really. But I mean, that's still +3 or 4 damage. And it could even be the difference between you having to play 3 and having to play 4. So it's not insubstantial, let's put it that way. Then look at this. I love this card. This card came out in set 5 of MHA. I've basically never seen it. And you'll see, this isn't even the real art of it. This is Nickelback, because I wanted you all to look at this photograph. But this has Enhanced Commit, reveal 1 foundation card in your hand. This attack gets +X speed, X equals the printed difficulty of the revealed card. So here we're looking at, there are a lot of +2s, there are a few 3s in this deck. +2 or +3 speed immediately turns on our Deadly Fire, and buffs things like Smiling Titan attacks, Hardened Blitz, or Hulking Grimace to levels where they're unlikely to be even blockable, let alone blocked. Yeah, you have to give away a block that you're holding in hand, but I mean, in the new meta where we've got foundations that are 4 and 5 diffs seeing play, this actually seems really, really powerful. Even commit for +2 speed is pretty good. I mean, that's more than Ice Gliding was doing. Then we have Facing Danger. Destroy this to change an attack's damage to 5, or Tenacious Flip after it's committed due to a rival effect, unflip 1 other foundation. And the unflip, not likely to come up, but it might. But the change in attack's damage to 5 is huge in this meta of huge attacks. This, again, is another great defensive card to just stay in the game a little bit longer. Guarantee that you get that turn 3, maybe. Maybe even take you to turn 4. And just, yeah, it's a really solid defensive piece. Plus, if your opponent nerfs your attack, you can always set it back to 5. And it's +1 damage on things like Full Cowling Impact or Risky Encounter, which usually doesn't matter. That's only usually. It can. It can be the difference between winning the game and leaving your opponent on 1. Then, continuing the defensive lineup, we have Ymir's Regeneration. This has remove after you take damage from an unblocked attack, gain 4 health. It's real simple. It's just keep you healthy, keep you in the game. Turning to Harden gives -2 speed or +2 damage. So buffs your stuff, makes their stuff more blockable. Real simple. And then when you're done with that, you destroy it to your Risky Encounter. When it's destroyed, you draw a card. Sins of the Past, this card is incredible. This is just after you play it, as a foundation or as a block, you remove a card from your rival's discard pile. So it takes away their Risky Encounter. Only you get a Risky Encounter now. And you can sacrifice this and spend a momentum to draw 2 cards, which is just nice. Beneath the armor, you can flip your foundations before you sacrifice them, so just getting extra value out of them. Only once per turn, but you give +2 damage on your turn, then -2 on theirs, for a total of a 4 damage swing. Again, just changes the way the game flows in your favor. Nice little bit of defense, nice substantial bit of offense. May mean that you only have to use 2 or 3 attacks instead of 3 or 4. Fashion icon, flip to change the attack speed to the printed speed of an attack in your rival's card pool. So if they try to bait out a block with a low speed attack and then go for a high one later, and you still have a card in hand, you can just turn the high speed attack into a low speed again. I don't think this is amazing. I think it's interesting, but I think it's niche that it comes up. Endenimed, destroy a foundation, discard the top 2 cards of either player's deck. So you don't super care about milling your opponent. You're not going to win the mill game because we're not a slow deck. You don't super care about milling yourself, but it can come up in terms of putting more hardened or red cards in your discard pile, or fishing for that risky encounter that you need. What you do care about is destroying a foundation. It buffs your risky encounter, it sets off all your foundations being destroyed this turn effects, and it just keeps you out of deadlock if you ever get even close. Not that the player playing this deck ever did. Gas Cloud, after it's committed due to your rival's non-character effect, they lose 2 health. This is interesting, because this doesn't resist stun, this punishes stun, but it punishes stun in a weird way, where it only matters if they don't win that turn. But if they don't win that turn, that's essentially 2 extra damage you've stacked on them for stunning you. So you just say to your opponent, are you sure you can win? Because if you can't take me this turn, it just makes it all the easier for me to kill you in 2 attacks on mine. It's a very interesting card, Gas Cloud. I've been looking for a home for it. I don't know if this is quite that home, but it could be. Then Red Riot's the coolest, has a tenacious ability to give +2 damage, and if your opponent's in deadlock, your hardened or red attacks get +1/+1. That's fine. It's really just we flip it for +2 damage and then blow it up to something. Armin's Fate, flip for +1 or -1 damage, so kind of just a worse version of Red Riot's the coolest, but with a better block. Powerful Escort, enhanced commit, this attack gets +1 damage. This card is garbage, but it checks a 6, and it is still +1 damage, which can very occasionally make the difference. Then we get to our 0 diffs, we've got Enamored. After this foundation's ready during the enhanced step, it gets +1 or -1 speed. Have we seen anything that readies foundations? I guess there was the if the opponent's in deadlock, ready an extra 1. This same old field rations, but I can't think what else is doing that. I don't think Enamored is actually doing much for us other than being a 0 with a +2 blow block. Reluctant Roll Model flips for -1 damage, even while committed. That's next to nothing, but it's better than the Godzilla card Tough Skin. And, you know, it's still a little bit of extra defense. It could be all that matters. Then, speaking of ways to destroy foundations, we got Go for the Win. Go for the Win turns your committed face down into 2 ready face downs, as long as your opponent has more foundations than you, and given the amount we're destroying, that's not unreasonable. It also just says, if your rival passes on playing an Enhance, your attack gets +2 speed. You don't do that when they pass after you've played an Enhance. You pass, then they pass, then you say +2 speed. Then because you've both passed, the Enhance step ends. They don't get to do anything about that +2 speed. You can change the maths so that your opponent can't respond to the maths by playing this from hand. It does put an extra card into your pool. It does mean extra progressive difficulty. It does shorten turn. But if this gets through your final kill attack, that's all it needs to do. Then we have Ultra Compressed Weights. Second ability on this, to stop cards leaving the card pool. Not usually going to be useful, but may occasionally come up if you think your opponent's playing something like Genkai's Guidance. Mostly, though, I think this is here for that response commit. After your attack deals damage, choose one committed foundation. While this card is committed, the chosen foundation cannot be readied. So you essentially just freeze your opponent's foundation, of your choice to be clear, whenever your attacks hit. It's not a lot, but it just turns off a problem card. It's nice. Suited Up can be committed or destroyed as if it was a foundation to pay costs. Now, I know the person playing this deck, when they put it in, thought that included checks. It does not unless the check is part of a cost. And I don't mean the cost to play a card, I mean an actual cost. But if a card says destroy a foundation, we can still destroy this. If a card says commit a foundation, we can still commit this. And response once per enhanced step. After the speed of an attack is modified, it gets +1 or -1 speed. Only playable while committed. So this is really good because it interacts with a character ability. Character always gives +1 extra speed. And then opponent, anytime they buff their speed, you just negate one of it. I'm scrolling back up to the attack specifically now, because this interacts with Deadly Fire. This is another way we get, rather than to 6, we get to 7. Because it's +1 to our character abilities, +2 speed. So yeah, that's real nice. As is response once per enhanced step. After the damage of an attack is modified, it gets +1 or -1 damage. The same thing for damage there. So yeah, we just get to add an extra +1/+1 onto every attack as long as it's not one of our 4 diffs. And in addition to that, we get to negate our opponent's buffs a little bit, which I guess is another defensive option. Then we have this, Battle Arena, massively useful here. While on your stage at the start of the end phase, players who dealt damage this turn add the top card of their deck to their momentum. That's not amazing. It does turn your 1 momentum into 2 momentum, or your 2 momentum into 3 momentum, which I guess buffs your powerful attacks significantly, but your opponent's probably going to get more use out of that ability than you are, to be honest, because your opponent's more likely to poke and not kill. However, response commit after you make a check to play an attack, that check gets +2, making us essentially 2 foundations in 1 card, is absolutely insane when you're playing a deck like this that needs to play 7 diffs and 6 diffs all the time. When you're checking a 7, you flip over a 5 and you only have to commit 1 thing. That is fantastic. There are 2 downsides to this, and that's 1, that it can't buff your blocks, it is only an attack, and 2, this is a terrain, which means if your opponent plays a terrain, this goes away. It's like unique, but across both players. However, the interesting thing about that is that you can also destroy your opponent's terrains with it, which if you're playing against something like my Ghidorah deck that I showed previously, that runs Twisty Surroundings to essentially break a 2 you, not only are you not getting breaker 2 anymore when this comes down, you're also getting that +2 to your attack checks. So it's essentially a 4 swing to your checks, which is crazy. So yeah, there are ups and downs to running terrains in this deck. It's not as secure a card as some, and I guess it means you can't play both copies that we have, but it still just passes your checks really well. And that's all it really needs to do. Our vertical maneuvering equipment here is just another asset that gives a way to use your momentum. Let's say you hit your opponent twice, but you needed a third one to kill with. Now you've got 2 momentum, so 2 of your opponent's attacks, you just get to minus their speed by 3, which is huge, especially as we can turn that into -4 with Suited Up. And then, on top of that, you choose the zone. So it doesn't matter what cards you have in hand, you can always block the attack. And then it just gives +2 damage to your kill attack as well. It's ridiculous. That's everything for the deck now, but it's an absolutely huge deck. I don't think it's much over the minimum 60 cards, but I think it is a little bit. But there's just so many different things crammed into it. Some good, some bad. Definitely could be optimized a little bit, but it will probably never actually see that optimization. Because unfortunately, the Smiling Titan here has had some errata. Let's take a look at that. This is errata I'm getting to a little bit late. This is last month's errata, released on the 5th of November, Bonfire Night. So this is errata to Ryukyu and Smiling Titan. The Ryukyu errata is, instead of response after you play a card, if it has no abilities, draw 1 card and you add 1 card from your hand to your momentum. She now reads, after you play an attack card, if it has no abilities, draw 1 card. You may add 1 card from your hand to your momentum. Which means all those blank foundations that were coming out that were massively buffing her no longer do. Ryukyu is way worse than she was, and it's intentional. But I think this is stupid, because there was an actual problem with Ryukyu, and they've not really fixed it. Because the problem wasn't her herself, it was how freely she could pump momentum into this 1 card here, this vertical maneuvering equipment. Because, you know, if every card you play, or at least every other card, generates momentum, that means you can always -3 your opponent's attack. You can always change the zone to whatever you want to block with. And then, oh look, you blocked with a blank card. Let's gain more momentum. And so that was absolutely stupid. But the thing is, vertical maneuvering equipment is actually really stupid in every deck. I was playing Mimic against this, and when vertical maneuvering came down, if my opponent had momentum, that just said everything I play is getting blocked. So I needed a kill before vertical maneuvering came down and my opponent got momentum, or I just could not kill at all. And it's not the only deck where I've encountered that. And likewise, I've played decks where vertical maneuvering equipment has been my entire defense, and it has worked. Vertical maneuvering equipment is way too much of a game-defining card. I'm really not a fan of it, and I think that's what should have gone here, not Ryukyu. Ryukyu didn't need to be touched. Vertical maneuvering equipment absolutely had to go. And little spoiler for December's ban update, which I'll show you a little later in the month, maybe at the start of January. Vertical maneuvering equipment has still not been banned, and is still a problem. What has been banned is Risky Encounter, which honestly is entirely reasonable. It's proven to be an extremely effective tool in competitive play, mainly as an end-of-string finisher that comes in for huge damage. Most significantly for us, the card is an outlier tool in decks killing their opponent on turn 2. The death symbol casino decks, as people are calling them, Ogre and others are utilizing it to devastating effectiveness in the early stages of the game. It has proven to be both too fast and too consistent. We want to reduce the number of games ending on turn 2, and this is the obvious place to start. Yeah. However, getting rid of vertical maneuvering equipment would mean you'd be removing the need for games to end on turn 2. Because you need to end before that card becomes active, or it becomes a real challenge to end it at all. But talking about that risky encounter, this was a one-off that we saw consistently because you can just always pick it up and use it out of your discard pile. That consistency is absurd, and it is a real problem. It's not the fact that it gets plus damage, it's not that it's fast, it's that it is that consistent, even as a one-off in this big deck. That is the problem with Risky Encounter. It was the kill card a lot of the time in this deck. And as a one-off, that is ridiculous. This card is not okay. It went for a reason, and it had to go. Another one that had to go is Twisting Azure Inferno, which, if you remember, is enhance. If this attack's damage is 7 or greater, for the rest of the turn, your checks get +1 and your rival's checks to play blocks get -1. So essentially, just +1 speed to all your attacks and -1 to progressive, meaning that it itself doesn't count. We saw way back in my All Might Trueform deck just how much being able to play multiple attacks that don't count towards progressive matters. You'll see that even more in one of my upcoming decks. It's a base 4/4. With numbers getting bigger and bigger, it's becoming easier and easier to just turn that 4 into a 7. And Smiling Titan doesn't do that at all because it's a 4 difficulty, but a lot of characters did. And the fact that this also gives itself +2 whenever you play an action means it's even easier to get there. This card has been a problem for a long time. We've mentioned it on previous ban lists even. I'll try and link some of those down below. Because this has been banned in Retro. It has not been banned before, however, in Standard. This is new. And it's still actually not banned in the My Hero Academia Spotlight format. So if you want to be a menace, there's where to look. But personally, I think you just shouldn't play Twisting Azure Inferno there either. It's a busted card. It was fun when it came out, but that was set 3. It had to go. It's gone for a reason. Finally, though, getting to the main event, Smiling Titan. Now, instead of Tenacious, your attack gets +X speed and +X damage. X equals your attack's printed difficulty -4. It's now +X speed or +X damage. X still equaling your attack's printed difficulty -4. The justification for this is that Smiling Titan was always meant to swing big and get rewarded for it. The idea of playing just 1 or 2 huge attacks each turn was one they wanted to encourage with the release of Attack on Titan. In practice, though, it's been very consistent and punishing to 7 hand-sized characters in particular. Yeah, they die in 2 hits. Smiling requires specific answers, and while that isn't a problem by default, the problem stems from how punishing it is for most decks when you don't find those tools. We believe this change helps provide more space for 7-handers in the format, while still allowing Smiling Titan to be effective in showing off its unique game plan. So, I don't fully believe in that. I think they wanted this character to play 1 or 2 big attacks, never really realized that this character can play 3 or 4 attacks, and there is no reason not to play those 3 or 4 attacks, because if you go all in and kill, you've still killed. As for the adjustment, yeah, +X speed or damage maybe, but it means it's a lot more blockable if you choose the damage, and it's a lot less damaging if you choose the speed. The character is very much going to be playing a slower game now because she has to play a whole load more attacks to successfully kill through blocks, or the opponent has to really overcommit to do it. In terms of requiring specific answers, I kind of disagree that that's not a problem. When everybody's having to run specific answers because of this one deck, this deck is centralizing the meta. Centralizing the meta means that other decks are not viable because this deck exists. I can see how, maybe at a more refined competitive level, this Smiling Titan could actually have been a serious issue. But at the same time, I don't think it was busted here. I just think it was really strong. Because I was going toe for toe with it, and it basically just came down to the dice roll that this won the event and I didn't. Even so, though, I think it was really interesting to look at this completely unrefined mess of a list. No offense to the person who built it, they had a limited budget and it was shortly after they returned to the game, having not played since about set 4. But it was really interesting to see how such an unrefined jumble of a list could still do so well at locals, which in its own right kind of hints at the problem with the character, right? And more importantly, the problem with that risky encounter that they just happened to pull from their booster box, because, well, a one-off should not be that consistent. I think I've said everything I need to about this deck, though. And we'll catch you soon for some other things, including, quite possibly, the December ban list update. See you then, peeps. Bye.